Last weekend, my brother and I decided to take part in the GMTK Game Jam 2022. We had 48 hours to make a game with the theme, The Roll of the Dice. The theme was announced at 6 o'clock UK time, so we got to work brainstorming, trying to come up with our idea for a game. I was actually driving over from work to do the jam in person at the time, so we hopped into a Discord call to discuss our ideas. This turned out to be extremely useful because the first few ideas we had were really not good, and it gave us time to come up with a few ideas before steaming ahead down the wrong path. This theme is actually a really interesting one, not overly vague, but also not too specific. We eventually settled on the idea of a 2D platformer. My brother specialises in concept art and 2D art, so we decided this would work nicely. To incorporate the theme, we decided to make our character a bit of a chancer, who decided which abilities he had using the roll of the dice. We felt it was important for a game jam to have a relatively short game loop, so we decided to make it relatively fast paced where you die in one hit. To make it less frustrating, we wanted it to not feel too punishing when you die and only set you back in a minor way. When I arrived, we wrote some of our ideas down on a whiteboard. Notice how it says 3 stages plus a boss, and that we have 2 lots of 6 abilities, shooting and melee. Yeah, feature creep is real. While I got to work programming the basic player movement, my brother started coming up with a concept for a player character. We went for a cat who was a bit of a chancer and used dice as his weapon, as well as his oversized sword, because why not? After a short while, we had the first sprite for our game. Totally not inspired by anything at all. As we were coming up with ideas, we quickly realised that coming up with a good set of 12 meant that we had massively overscoped, so we trimmed our game down and decided we would just have the 6 abilities. We did need to keep to the theme after all. And the melee ability would just stay the same, kind of like a basic attack. We eventually settled on our 6, a simple ability where the cat throws out a die, a homing shot that did a bit less damage but would be easier to aim, a shotgun styled attack with shorter range. The 4th ability would be like the first one, but a larger, slower projectile. The 5th ability was a big energy aura that would damage all enemies near the player, and the final ability would be a high damage laser beam. Once we had decided on the abilities, I programmed a system to add them to the game. I think I probably went a bit overboard here. I spent a while trying to program it correctly, with base classes and scriptable objects. This would be handy if we decided to work on the game in the future, but I think for the jam it ended up losing us time, when I could have just done the good old-fashioned copy-paste and hard-coded each ability. That said, it did turn into a bit of a blessing when we went to tune them afterwards, and could easily tweak them by just changing some variables and the projectiles that were fired. Another benefit of this system was that the enemies ended up being quite easy to add to the game. You could simply create an enemy object, add the homing script from the homing projectile ability, and make the enemy a projectile, which could damage the player. This all works perfectly. Sort of. Well, it did the second time. To go with our rogue-lite mechanics, we wanted to add a checkpoint type system, and what could be better than a bonfire? With the sprite created, I coded up a simple system that lights the fire once the player goes past. When the player dies, they're brought back to the last bonfire they lit. The one major component we were missing was the UI. While my brother was working on the art for the environments and level design, I had loads of fun programming the best element of any game, the UI. It was late on Saturday and we were feeling the pressure. We both had things planned for Sunday, so decided we would need to put a shift in to finish the game before Sunday morning. We strapped in for a long night and started working towards finishing the game and adding the finishing touches. It was already 4 AM at this point. It was 7:30 in the morning on Sunday, the sun was up, birds were singing, we were tired, but we had finished. We had our game, 9 lives to die. So yeah, the UI isn't the best, and the end screen is functional, but the game was finished, and we had completed our entry for the jam. All we needed to do was upload it to itch, go to bed, and go about our Sunday as planned. Wrong. Turns out there was an error in our game that meant the web build is currently broken. Luckily for us, our project wasn't a complete disaster and the standalone build seems to be working okay. We both really enjoyed the jam, we learned a lot and had a great time doing it. It was fairly stressful, but in the end we were super happy with our game and hope you'll enjoy playing it. You can check it out using the links in the description. We'd love to hear your feedback and feel free to give us a rating in the Game Jam too.